Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and also, as many of you know, and particularly relevant to today's video, CMO of Gamefound. I try to limit Gamefound specific videos to once or twice a year, but usually at the beginning of each year I try to do a bit of a recap of the state of things of Gamefound, state of things at Gamefound, and that's today's video. For all intents and purposes, consider this a sponsored video. I'll have the sponsor tag and all that. I'm not being paid for this video, but I do work for Gamefound, and so if I'm doing a dedicated Gamefound video, I consider it sponsored content for all practical purposes. So if this video isn't for you, giving you the heads up at the very beginning, this is a video about the state of things of Gamefound, how 2025 went, some of our goals for 2026, kind of general a data, fluff, a little of those different things to talk about how things have gone over the past year and again, going into next year. With that said, I'll be going over a bunch of different things. I'll be going over some of the data that we put out at an end-of-year blog post, some of my own data and reports that I've talked about in the past and various things, some general, larger scale initiatives we've done over the past year and how they've done. We'll be going through all of that, timestamps to everything down below. But first and foremost, if you are a creator interested in meeting with me at Gama Expo is coming up March 1st through 5th, 2026 in Louisville, Kentucky. If you are a creator going there, I guess technically either on the Board Game Co side, if you're interested in meeting me on behalf of Board Game Co, or again, I'm doing this because of Gamefound. If you're interested in meeting with me on behalf of Gamefound, I'll include a calendar link down below. Feel free to reach out to me or whatnot. I would love to meet with you on anything, I guess, Gamefound or Board Game Co related. But with that said, I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of our data that we have from the past year. We put out a blog post on Gamefound. I'll link to that down below so you can go more into detail. I'll be going over some of the main highlights, but the very short version of it is, it's been a good year. I mean, that's complicated. That's a very complicated thing to say. It's been a very tricky year for the state of the hobby. A lot of companies have closed down. There's been a lot of upheaval in terms of tariffs and the state of reliability or what creators can expect, what backers can expect. So I do say it's been a good year for how Gamefound has gone, for the numbers on the Gamefound side, but I also say that with the recognition that it's been a harder year for the industry in general. In fact, crowdfunding is actually down. It's down from, I believe, 311 million in 2024, tabletop crowdfunding. Tabletop crowdfunding is down from 311 million raised in 2024 to 280 million raised in 2025, a 10% drop, roughly 10% drop in crowdfunding volume, which makes sense. Usually crowdfunding volume goes up. In COVID, it went down a little bit because of, again, the craziness of the state of things in the world and the way it's affected our board game hobby, that it makes sense to see a drop, especially in the type of aspect where you're kind of raising for the future. You're buying for the future, so it introduces anything that introduces a degree of instability has a knock-on effect on that, on how that goes. But with that said, looking over here on this blog post from Gamefound, again, I'll link this down below if you want to go into it, but in general, total crowdfunding volume on Gamefound. This is not just crowdfunding, this is crowdfunding, pledge manager, all that. It's continued to go up year over year from 46 million in 2022 to 108 million in 2023 to 159 million in 2024 and 189 million, a 19% jump in 2025. In general, out of the top of crowdfunding campaigns, in fact, if you go to Tabletop Analytics, you can go look through this data yourself. It does only have Gamefound in 2025, and previous it does not have Gamefound, but this is still 2025 data. But if you look at the top 10 most funded crowdfunding campaigns in 2025, Gamefound is 9 out of the top 10 most funded crowdfunding campaigns. That number has continued to creep up every single year, which again is fairly impressive, biased opinion and all that, fairly impressive considering how short Gamefound's time in actual crowdfunding has been. It started as a pledge manager for years, but it only entered crowdfunding properly in around 2022, I want to say, and to that end, having already 9 of the top 10 most funded campaigns in 2025 is incredibly impressive. Arc Nova took the number 3 spot, not Arc Nova, my apologies, Arc Nova's number 3 on Gamefound, but in total, Don't Starve took the number 3 spot, but outside of that, we have The Witcher Legacy, Agricola, Arc Nova, Below the Asylum, The Elder Scrolls, Berserk, This War of Mine, Dragon Eclipse, and Massive Darkness. These took the 9 out of the top 10 most funded. If you go to the top 20, Gamefound has 16 out of the top 20. If you go to the top 40, we continue to have a larger and larger portion out of the most funded crowdfunding campaigns. In general, page views are up 62%, over 1.7 million users. User growth in general up 359,000 accounts and created in 2025, bringing us to 1.7 million active accounts on Gamefound. We have 496 campaigns launched in 2025, a 65% growth over the past year. In general, again, continued increase in the number of campaigns from large and smaller creators alike. We're going to come back to the smaller creators because that was some of our 2025 goals that I set out for last year. Crowdfunding campaigns, we have 496 over here, which looks like 496 campaigns over here, and then additional bigger highlights over here, which we'll talk about as well. So those are some of the general data points as far as crowdfunding volume. When I mentioned, let me just look at one more thing over there. This was a increase over here of 19% in total crowdfunding volume, but if you're looking specifically at crowdfunding, meaning not Pledge Manager, a late pledge, all of that stuff. Gamefound had a 15% increase from 94 million raised in 2024 to 108 million raised in 2025. And again, when you're looking at the full state of things, the full state of crowdfunding, including Gamefound, saw a 10% decrease in the total volume of crowdfunding funds raised. And again, that's just the crowdfunding phase when it's doing the campaign itself. So from 2024 to 2025, the overall industry saw a 10% increase, and Gamefound saw a 10% decrease, and Gamefound saw a 15% increase. So in general, we've continued this when I say it's been a good year at the beginning, while being mindful and recognizing that it's been a struggling year in many aspects, Gamefound has managed to continue to grow even within an industry that is seeing a degree of downturn. As far as initiatives we have over the past year, because there's been a lot of things we've done in 2025. And there's always a lot of small things. There's always a lot of bug releases and quality of life changes, dark mode. I can't remember if dark mode is 2025 or 2024, but there's always a lot of these small little things here or there that are, again, adding quality of life, whether it's something that a creator asks for. And again, if you are a creator and you want to see features, let us know. We are constantly adding things. We put out new sprints every single 2 weeks. For those of you who don't do development, sprints are development cycles effectively. We're constantly putting out new features on the platform, new things to be that help your, whether it's dashboard reporting, whether it's analytics, whether it's exports, all these small things that many people won't see on a day-by-day basis. We are constantly putting them out based on what we see is needed, based on what creators tell us is needed, and based on what the backers tell us they want. We are constantly adding those things. And again, I did this last year. If you have things you want to see as a creator or as a backer, please put them in the comments down below, or reach out directly to me. My email, my Gamefound email, and my BoardGameCo email are both in the description of all my videos. Feel free to reach out to me. They all get passed on to the team, and we put things together. You may not see the thing you've asked for right away, but people asked for an app for years. We gave them an app. People asked for dark mode. Last year's video, I had someone asking for dark mode. We put it out. We gave you dark mode. These are things we constantly are trying to make your life better as much as we possibly can. We consider Gamefound to be a platform that is built to continue to grow and to adapt to the state of what the industry needs. This is something we saw over 2025 with the release of, I think the blog post is actually about to get into that, tariff management or whatnot. Over here, tariff manager over here. Like in general, because of the speed at which things were shifting at the beginning of this year, at the beginning of 2025, we did adapt as much as possible to give creators tools to be able to work with the instability that this new tariff situation was giving. We always want to build a better platform. We never want to be standing still. To that end, some of the various highlights we saw over the past year is we saw, again, tariff management tools to give creators ways to better work with backers around that instability. Endgame was a huge feature that came out last year that in general just continued to be adapted a lot by the creators and by the audience. And Endgame is a fascinating one because I think over time I have finally started to see a small degree of pushback of that feeling of it feels like you're just trying to get a little more out of us, which is interesting because in general, one of the reasons I was very happy with Endgame as a feature, if you're not familiar, I should give you some more context. If you're not familiar, Endgame is a feature on the platform that effectively a creator can turn it on, and when the campaign ends, a 10-minute timer starts. And every time someone backs or adds to a pledge with a limit of once per user, it resets that 10-minute countdown. And so you effectively have a campaign that's supposed to end today, but it could be extended by 2 hours. It could be extended by a day or 2 days, or in the case of The Witcher Legacy, it saw like a 5-day record. I can't remember the number, but like a large record. In fact, I think it's in this post over here. The Witcher Legacy, no, not here. We got Endgame record, 7 days, 6 hours, and 20 minutes is what The Witcher Legacy extended Endgame, breaking a new record for the tool. But again, it's a relatively new tool, so we still have time to go. But when it first came out, it was fascinating because it kind of brought some of that magic of crowdfunding back to a degree. That sense of crowdfunding over the years has become a bit more predictable. Things that were so cool and interesting and innovative, stretch goals, added things, all this stuff. You know, look at this, we have more backers now, and so we're going to add this extra thing. People are liking this and voting on that, and we're adding these new sculpts. It was magical to a degree. Over time, as it became more standardized, some of that magic did get lost, and I saw that in 2025, Endgame brought a little bit of that magic back, that state of a campaign's about to end, and you don't know what can happen next. And it was a tool that was good for creators. It gave them additional funding, additional awareness, additional visibility, but it was also fun for backers. Most backers involved, I say most with the mindfulness that it was most backers involved were excited to see, like, can we push this to a new record? Can we reset that clock? Can we extend this? And in some cases, over time, creators started to add degrees of extras you could unlock, things that could happen if Endgame extended enough. They took advantage of the tool in a way that monetized it to a degree, which made it a little bit more exciting, but also commercialized it to a small degree. So by the end of 2025, Endgame is a tool that generally still seems to be very well received by backers, which is important to me personally because my favorite kinds of marketing tools, I guess, are those that everyone wins from, that the creator wins from, the backers enjoy. Obviously, Gamefound as well is benefiting from that. So my favorite marketing is mutually beneficial marketing where everyone is enjoying the process of what's happening. There are often tools that come out that aren't mutually beneficial, that might help one party at the expense of another, and those I don't quite like as much. And so Endgame generally, again, there's some degree of small pushback we've seen as it's become more normalized, but for the most part, it's been a very well received marketing tool that has worked well for creators while looping in their audience and engaging it. I've seen many campaigns excited for, well, when this launches, maybe we can beat the record. Maybe we can get the most funding or the longest time span of how long a campaign has ended. Indiegogo was a huge thing for us in 2025. Indiegogo was acquired by Gamefound in 2025, which was a huge move in terms of Gamefound always had the goal or desire to kind of spread out from just tabletop. We entered the space with tabletop. Tabletop has always been an integral part of crowdfunding in general, so crowdfunding as a whole. It was the largest category on Kickstarter, the largest single category on Kickstarter, and Gamefound entered that market as originally with the original intent of being, again, the original history of Gamefound is started as a pledge manager for Awakened Realms on its own, then it grew to its own tool as a separate company with its own pledge manager, and then eventually became its, tabletop crowdfunding. And that's always been kind of the bread and butter of where Gamefound is, but if Gamefound was able to do what Gamefound was able to do with tabletop, there's always that goal of, well, what else can we do if we expand it to that larger space? And Indiegogo represented a huge potential opportunity to kind of jumpstart that launch. And so we acquired Indiegogo in 2025. It's gone incredibly well so far as the speed of which we, again, as a late end of year edition. Like, I think the technology was only really adapted in October, so this is really something that's still very recent for us. But it's been a good experience in terms of being able to work with Indiegogo creators to learn new markets, to bring new tools for Indiegogo creators that also help on Gamefound, to bring additional visibility from the 38 million Indiegogo user base over to Gamefound as well, having that additional, again, cross-traffic visibility. They are still two separate platforms, but now we can kind of take the best of both worlds and learn from both and apply it to both. If you go to Indiegogo, you'll see that familiar kind of layout and setting. It will look similar to Gamefound because it's built on Gamefound's technology base. So it's gone incredibly well so far, and we're excited for what 2026 will bring. Again, it's still a fairly new and recent thing for us. AdFound was another huge thing for us in 2025. AdFound is our automated marketing tool that allows a lot of creators to be able to utilize our ad team effectively without having to utilize our ad team. It's our automated ad tool using the intelligence and knowledge that our ad team has poured into things, but giving you as the creator the tools to jump into it yourself. And through that end is able to do so at a lower commission rate because you're just using a tool as opposed to our actual, team hands-on and all of that. Although you still always have access to people if you need to. But AdFound was one of our big initiatives because in 2025, one of our big goals was to help grow our smaller creator audience. And we've done a few things along that to help, and we'll talk a little bit how that went shortly. But one of the big ones was AdFound. Again, it's trying to be able to figure out a way to work with smaller or medium creators on a larger scale and give them the tools and visibility and platform benefits as much as possible in a way that gives them, that's more accessible to more people. And AdFound went incredibly well in that sense. In general, again, I think we have another thing over here. AdFound continues to develop over here. 978 campaigns launched, 323 creators, 5 million revenue generated, a 5.28 average ROAS. For those who don't know, ROAS is return on ad spend. It's the idea that you spend $100 in marketing, how many sales did you get from that $100? You have to be able to get, generally you want to get at least a 3 or 4 to 1 ROAS, depending on the industry you're in. There's some industries can get away with less than that, but in general you want to see at least 3 to 4. Getting 5.28 for an automated tool is incredible, and we are very happy with how it's gone. Again, both in terms of well, as a tool, how it's gone, and how it's helped us build out our smaller creator audience. We also have the data over here. One of the things I did, I've talked about this in a different video, I don't remember over here, but I had data around reprints that I put together to kind of compare platforms and how they did. And this is something that I updated for the end of the year. So this is now fully updated through the entire 2024 and 2025. This is not the prettiest looking page over here. The short version in general is Gamefound reprints do incredibly well. Reprint from Gamefound that comes from Kickstarter and goes to Gamefound on average funds 89.73% higher. This is data I'm happy to share with anyone who wants it. It is, again, I have not just the number, I have all the underlying data for people to look at and interpret as they want. The biggest thing here, because I've talked about this already, is the fact that the data has remained consistent, and even when updating with adding adding like around 100 more campaigns to flesh out the entire 2025, the numbers continue to remain incredibly positive. So that number you saw right there, 89.73, that's the updated number when I fully rounded up for 2025. Additionally, one thing I did is this past year is I put together data on IPs, intellectual properties. We have seen a rise in intellectual properties over the past year. In fact, looking back at that Gamefound blog, if I scroll up over here, let's take a look. If we look at the top 10 most funded campaigns across both platforms, from those we have The Witcher, Don't Starve, The Elder Scrolls, Berserk, This War of Mine, and then Destroy Mine. So five out of the top 10 most funded campaigns are intellectual property campaigns. And again, if you go to Tabletop Analytics, if you look through any of the top campaigns, IPs are something that have continued to grow year after year. It's been a bigger shift from adapting different audiences into tabletop as geek culture continues to grow, as board games continue to grow. And so something I did in December is I put together data around IPs, intellectual property campaigns, to see how well they do on Gamefound versus Kickstarter. I put together 2 years full of data. I'm going to spend like 2 minutes on this. I think it's interesting for those who appreciate data, but again, like much of my data, it's not necessarily the prettiest, but it is useful to see the results. But I put together 2 years worth of data, 2024 and 2025, 2 entire years, where I grabbed every single intellectual property board game that was on Kickstarter or on Gamefound that funded to at least $50,000. That's an arbitrary cutoff. It's because it's a manual process, and instead of having to go through every single campaign ever, it's anything 50,000 or higher, which generally for IPs is usually what you're going to see anyway. There's very few that are under that threshold. But with that said, over here is the data that, again, not the prettiest, but the data on those is your average Kickstarter IP campaign funds to 4,300 average backers. Your average Gamefound IP campaign has 7,000 average backers. There's $675,000 is the average funding of an IP campaign on Kickstarter, and 2.1 million, nearly 3.5 times that, is what the average IP gets on Gamefound. This is something I put together. Again, there's a lot more to go into, but I'm trying to keep this short. This is something I put together primarily because over the years I've heard that perception of, hey, it's an intellectual property, and because of that, it's, I don't know, what was it, Berserk, okay, it's an anime, it's a manga, or whatever it is, it's therefore it has that larger name brand recognition, and we want to bring that to Kickstarter because Kickstarter has that larger name brand recognition. Whereas that's something that I've heard as a theory, but I didn't think it was borne out by the data, and so I put it together, and it definitely isn't borne out by the data. The overall averages on how well a Gamefound IP campaign does is significantly better. Again, I have all this data for anyone, creator or backer alike, who wants to see it. But overall, that's kind of how 2025 went. 2026, we have a few goals coming up for us, and they are mostly rehashes of our 2025 goals with the addition of Indiegogo. In 2025, when I did this video last year, at the beginning of last year on the channel, I mentioned that our 2 biggest goals for 2025 were to grow our RPG audience and to grow our smaller creator audience. Those are both things that I consider us to have been very successful at, while still having more to go. Our RPG audience in general, like we had a huge growth in our RPGs in the past year. The quantity of RPGs on the platform. We had our whole entire RPG party, a larger initiative to work with creators and to also network them with larger creators and try to give them tools to be able to grow their RPGs. Something we'll be doing again. We'll be doing another RPG party in 2026. And in addition to that, we have a lot of larger, exciting RPGs coming to the platform. Conversations we started in 2025 and continued now to 2026. We have a lot of larger IPs coming to the Gamefound platform in 2026. Again, it's something that I'm very happy with the growth we saw in 2025, while still feeling there's a lot more room to grow. I believe in tabletop. Like if you're being I guess if you're just being direct about things, which I generally try to be, if you look at tabletop, I think we've killed it. If 9 of the top 10 most funded, most of the data seems to support that a lot of tabletop campaigns, significant amount of them do significantly better on Gamefound. If you're launching a board game, not every board game will be the right fit for Gamefound. There's still board games that, depending on what the target audience is, the type of game, the price point, there's a variety of factors, and there always will be a variety of factors. I will never simply say Gamefound is the best place for your board game. I think context matters, and knowing what that game is matters. But most of the time, I will believe that Gamefound, based on the data I have, is better for your board game. I don't always think that's going to be true with every board game, and especially as you move into other categories, it changes. We've done very well with accessories, tables, all these other types of things. But within RPGs has been a category that has been a slower uphill climb, not in terms of the results you can expect to see on Gamefound, but in terms of us even having that data to be able to show you how well does, all these RPGs do. We've had less data in that category, and so I'm very happy with the growth we've seen in 2025, but I'm also happy with the things coming in 2026. I believe 2026 is going to be a big year that going in 2027, I might take it off my goals list because I think we may have been able to achieve what we're trying to achieve within RPGs within that tabletop sector. And then smaller creators is another one. Smaller creators is one where Gamefound did start to a large extent it started with Awakened Realms originally, and then it was able to grow fairly quickly by working with a lot of established larger creators. And that means that over time, Gamefound also had that kind of record of, okay, Gamefound's great for larger creators, but it's not great for smaller creators. If you're a smaller creator, you want to go to Kickstarter. And for a long time, I think that was true. I don't think it's true anymore, with caveats. Again, every situation, every creator is going to be different, and if you want to consider Gamefound, by all means talk to me or someone on the team and we'll walk you through that. I'm a big believer in meeting expectations and having people happy with what their choice was and not just getting someone on board. But there was truth for a long time to the idea that a smaller creator didn't see the same level of success on Gamefound, that it might be better to go to Kickstarter with the larger drive-by traffic. But again, I think over 2025, a large part of that has shifted, although I still think there's room to grow. We went from 170, in terms of smaller creator growth, in 2024, we had 177 projects launching that were 50K or under. In 2025, that went to 322. So we nearly doubled the amount of smaller projects that you see on the platform. And this is always a tricky one to measure because then there's also smaller creators that achieve results that eclipse that. Projects like Principes that did like nearly 800,000 or whatever it was. That's, again, a first-time creator, first-time project. When I'm trying to measure smaller projects based on volume raised, that won't show up, but that's an indie creator doing the first-time project. You had reprints from individual creators like Earth Under Siege or Hellbringer, both that, initially launched on Kickstarter, and then they saw massive success in there. Like Hellbringer, I think, was crazy. It went from I can't remember what the Kickstarter numbers was, but it went to like 500,000 raised on Gamefound, knocked it out of the park, incredibly successful from what is effectively a smaller creator being able to grow on the platform. And I can go through dozens, literally dozens of these like individual use cases of creators we've seen, either because they're just a single man team or because of the results, but we've seen a lot of growth in that smaller creator category. But again, I still think there's room to grow there. So it's still part of our goals. In fact, right now, if you are a smaller creator with a project, we are running a kind of we're running a trial thing. Reach out to me. I want to sidetrack this. Reach out to me if you're a smaller creator with a project that you're considering platforms. It's currently a selective basis, so not everyone's eligible, but we are trying we're trying a thing. Reach out to us if you are interested. And then lastly, Indiegogo is going to be a big one. This is a little different because Indiegogo, it's a little different from the typical stuff I would cover on Board Game Co. in a sense. It's outside of the board game space, but Indiegogo is going to be a bigger initiative for Gamefound as well in 2026. That's basically kind of a end-of-year wrap of how things have gone in 2025, which they've gone fairly well as far as the numbers, as far as the growth, the backer growth, the creator growth, the project growth, smaller project growth, larger project growth, 9 of the top 10 most funded, data sets of comparisons between platforms. I'm very happy with how the year has gone in 2025 as far as, I hate saying that, I feel like every time I say I'm very happy with how the year has gone, I feel like I'm kind of ignoring, it's been a tough year for a lot of creators. In the umbrella of how Gamefound has gone, I'm very happy with how the year has gone for Gamefound. I say that with the recognition that it has been a struggling year for the industry in general, and it's unclear what the future is going to hold as far as the stability of any of this. So as far as the stability of the world, the stability of crowdfunding, it's very unclear. We'll see what happens. Our goal at Gamefound is to always work with creators to be able to, and backers, to be able to give them the best tools to weather that uncertainty while also hopefully delivering joy to your tabletop. In any case, this has been my end of year or beginning of year Gamefound wrap up. I'll be back next year with another one of these. Again, I usually try to keep Gamefound focused videos like this to once, maybe twice a year. I recognize that as a Board Game Co. subscriber, this is not what you're here for. So I start with a large disclaimer, all the information you need, and if there's something that you are interested in, well, the video is here as well. In any case, then, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and CMO of Gamefound. And until next time, I hope you have a good one.